Hello and welcome to our game with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined every week during the championship here by Richie Power and Ciaran Carey, two of the legends of the game. Lads, great to have you on board. Just to remind everyone, the first 15 minutes of the show will be fully available everywhere, and then after that, you'll have to go to patreon.com/OurGame. Do you know what? I want to jump straight into Limerick, Ciaran, because I had a friend who messaged me this morning. And he says, and this is obviously in the context of a fairly average league for Limerick and all these talk of injuries. And he goes, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in the Limerick dressing room the past few weeks? Imagine a group of the best assembled athletes ever to pick up a hurley training and getting fueled by media and the general public suddenly turning on them for their success. How pissed off they are now. Imagine Will O'Donoghue and what he's going to do to the next lad that runs at him. They're going to hammer all around him this year again. What do you think about where Limerick are at going into the championship this weekend and facing Cork?
I certainly wouldn't be falling into that trail of thought now, to be fair, and I suppose the one thing outside of gaining the bit of success they have for the last number of years, I suppose the big one really is, experience. And I suppose when the pressure is on, to keep the cool heads. And yeah, listen, their league form has showed, watch them the last 4 or 5 years, that they were a bit rattled.
Having a small bit of a drop there off Ciaran's. Richie, would you take up that point? You've obviously been there on a team that's dominated over the years, and you've probably had maybe that feeling of people talking about how someone else is going to take over. You're not quite where you had been. What would you think of that sort of message and that sort of feeling that Limerick would have going into this championship?
I suppose, Shane, listen, look, that's probably what's on everyone's lips at the moment is where are Limerick at the moment. You look at their league form, they did a fierce poor start, but they finished strong. And to be honest, I kind of expected as much. I think that they were probably a good 4 to 6 weeks behind everyone else. They had their team holiday, I think, the end of December or around that time. And, I didn't expect them to have a good run in the league, to be honest. But look, I don't think they're going to be too worried down there. They've been the best team in the country for, you could say, the last 4 years. And I think, everyone is talking about Waterford now at the moment and the Cork, but have they really shown enough credentials to say that they can knock Limerick off their perch? I don't think so. And I think Limerick are in a fierce, strong position going into the championship. I think, as you said, people are starting to question them where they're at, but I think John Kiely will be delighted, to be honest, because he's had his players together for the last, 6 weeks since they played a league game, maybe. And that's super preparation to go into a championship, and especially going to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, on Sunday. So, look, I wouldn't read into much of that at all. I think we're going to see the real Limerick on Sunday.
What sort of a game do you expect, Richie? Because part of me was thinking, the really high, I don't know if you watch too much soccer, but Liverpool against Man City was almost stressful to watch last week because the teams were just high pressing in each other's faces. And I wonder, do you think that these two teams will be in each other's faces with the puck outs, or will they kind of be dropping off each other, almost thinking, well, Cork, we're not going to give up the full back line like we did last year and throw them to the wolves?
Yeah, look, I think Cork, seriously probably have to have a look at their game plan with regards to last year's All-Ireland change. They can't go and try and play their own game against this Limerick team, and I think they would have learned the lesson from last year. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of game plan Cork bring to the game on Sunday. But I don't think Limerick are going to do anything different, to be honest. They're going to set up like they've set up over the past couple of seasons. But I do think they're going to bring a massive, massive intensity to this game on Sunday. As I said, it's a huge game for both teams. And, whoever loses this game on Sunday is under serious pressure for the rest of the championship, because realistically you have to win your last 3 games to qualify. So, it's a massive, massive game, and it's no different to any other teams this weekend that are playing the first round of the championships. If you lose your first game, you're putting serious pressure on yourself going forward in the championship. But definitely it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Cork play. Will they continue to play the running game? Personally, I wouldn't be inclined to try and play it through, a half forward line of Garrod Hegarty, Tom Morrissey. These guys, they're going to have to start playing the long ball to try and avoid coming into contact with these guys, because, no team in the country can compete with the Limerick physicality. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And as I said, it's do or die for both teams, because Munster's so competitive. I certainly wouldn't like to be going into the last 3 games and Munster having to get a result in all 3 games.
It's interesting. I saw some stats put up about those puckouts, and you were talking about the short ones. This is an interesting enough one. This was some statistics from GA Insights, and this is in 2021. The scores originating from short puckouts. That Cork got 25% of those from going short puckouts. Then Wexford 20%. So obviously that was under Davy Fitz in his final year. Antrim 14%. Limerick, I actually thought Limerick would have more from their short puckouts than 10%. Waterford 9%. That's absolutely flown up again this year, and I'll come to some stats on that in a while. Tip 8%, and you can see Kilkenny just 5%, but we'll probably come to Kilkenny later on and talk about how they're maybe readjusting this year. But for Cork, in some ways, if they're getting a bit of joy out of that and going short, do they nearly have to persist with it and hopefully to, I don't know, fail better this year at a minimum, and obviously hope to beat the likes of Limerick?
Well, yeah, look, I suppose that 25%, Shane, is probably made up of, their Munster Championship games and obviously the semi-final against Kilkenny, because they had great success against Kilkenny in the semi-final with their short puckouts. But, I suppose you have to prepare differently for different teams, and certainly every team in the country has to prepare differently for Limerick. It's no different to when, we were winning All Irelands or Tipperary as well. Like you always had to prepare differently for certain teams, and Cork have to have a different game plan going into this game on Sunday, because no difference, physicality wise, this Limerick team are up there with there's the strongest, the most physical, the most powerful teams that have ever probably played the game. So trying to play through these guys, in my opinion, is a recipe for disaster. And Cork have enough good, fast, nippy forwards, and Páirc Uí Chaoimh is a big field, so I think they're going to have to try and isolate the space and try and get ball in front of the likes of Patrick Horgan, the Conor Leahans, and take on the Limerick defence, because I do think that this Limerick defence can be got at, but it all depends on whether they can bypass that middle third, and if you can get that ball into a full forward line that's willing to take on their men, I think there's goals there for Cork. But again, it all comes from what game plan Ciaran Kingston and his selectors come with on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Ciaran is just trying to go onto another device, so hopefully he'll be right soon. And obviously for the rest of the show here, Richie, I'm going to bring up the 2 teams, the probable teams that will start at the weekend. Obviously, we're not entirely sure just yet. And I've looked at a Cork backline now, and this is speaking to Cork people as well, that and Niall O'Leary is a bit of an injury concern, but Niall O'Leary, Damien Cahalane, which would be a change from Rob Downey last year in the final. He's played in wing back sometimes in the league this year. Sean O'Donoghue, who's done quite well, obviously, anytime he's played pretty much. Tim O'Mahony, Mark Coleman, and Ciaran Joyce. Now, they mightn't necessarily line out exactly like that, but if you look at that team, and hopefully you can see that clearly enough there, and I'm going to guess that Ger Millerick is going to drop in and man mark Cian Lynch. Do you look at that Cork backline and think there's frailties there, or how would you view it?
No, I wouldn't think frailties. I suppose looking at the full back line, I suppose personally, Damien Cahalane for me would be somewhere that Limerick probably could get a bit of joy out of if they try and isolate him on the edge of the square. Robert Downey, I'm surprised that he's not going to be, I suppose in the number 2 to 7, but
maybe he will now. That's
yeah, but after a great year last year, I don't know. Personally, I just feel that Cork are a stronger unit as a backline, without Damien Cahalane, and that's just my own opinion. But certainly Tim O'Mahony and Joyce, Ciaran Joyce, sorry, 2 strong men. My only fear with Tim O'Mahony is he likes to go forward. He likes to rush forward on these long solo runs, and he's got on the end of a couple of big scores for Cork over the last during the league and even last year. But defence wise, I think Cork have to be rock solid on Sunday, and especially around that half back line. You're going to have Mark Coleman sweeping in behind that defence, which is his normal game. And Ger Millerick, as you said, will pick up Cian Lynch. So, if they can get Mark Coleman on the ball, and if he can sweep across, onto the breaking ball, I'd give Cork a serious chance. But again, they just have to be very, very, together as a group, defending for each other. running off the shoulder as well. If they are going to go with the running game, rather than bringing the ball into the tackle, try and avoid it, trying to go around it, and then deliver the ball. But certainly, look, Cork were probably the form team in the league behind Waterford, so they are bringing form into the championship, which I'm sure they'll take great confidence from as well.
I saw some great stats from Sean Flynn. He was the former statsman for Tipperary, and he was talking about the influence of Ciaran Lynch. And obviously, Ciaran knows that as well as anybody. But in the 3 games that Limerick played Cork last year, by a mile, he had the most shot involvements. He was involved in 38 shot involvements over 3 games, and 35 of them returned scores. The next was Galan with 22 shot involvements and 14 scored. Now, how much, and tell us from a Kilkenny point of view over the years, how much can you base a game plan around one guy only and saying, no matter who beats us, it's not going to be Ciaran Lynch?
Yeah, I suppose the big thing there, as you said, was against Cork, Shane. Cork play with the sweeper and they play with Mark Coleman sitting off Ciaran Lynch, obviously, and then Ger Mellerick sitting back as a centre back. I'm not sure if centre back is Ger Mellerick's position. Does he play there for his club? Is he a midfielder coming back trying to just fill a gap or fill a hole? Personally, I would go, man for man, on Ciaran Lynch. I'd pick someone to man mark him, whether he goes to midfield, half forward, centre forward, corner forward, full forward. I'd pick one man to follow him for the day. And I suppose, if you have someone sitting back in the pocket who's not actually picked centre back, is Ger Mellerick's mind and is his game solely on marking Ciaran Lynch, or is he kind of is there a part of him thinking that he has to keep an eye on his man in the middle of the field as well, or does he have to do a little bit more hurling? And if that happens, it allows Ciaran Lynch to get into these pockets and get into this space. But if you just go with someone that's like the likes of Niall O'Leary, the cornerback, he is a savage man marker. Again, is he someone that could play centre back? I'm not so sure, but for me, I think Ciaran Lynch is the go-to man for Limerick, and you have to pick one man to pick Ciaran Lynch up no matter where he goes. Live in his shorts for the 70 minutes and just concentrate on marking Ciaran Lynch. Just forget about the rest of your game, but just on knowing where Ciaran Lynch is at all times, because if Ciaran Lynch gets into this game on Sunday, Cork are going to be under serious pressure because he just makes everything click for Limerick.
Yeah, and obviously Limerick are so clever on the sideline. Kylie Kinnerk and the rest of their backroom team. Like a couple of years ago, Tipperary had put Alan Flynn on Ciaran Lynch in the league. He did quite well, and then they decided that was at midfield. But then they decided to move him centre forward. And like you said, was he as comfortable there? Last year in the Munster Championship game between these two teams, Cork and Limerick, Ger Millerick was doing a great job on Lynch. But then there was that black card, I think, to Peter Casey. Then Niall O'Leary ended up on him for a while at centre back area and kind of struggled on him. So I definitely take your point there. I think it's so important to make sure you have to pick someone who's comfortable in that position. But then you'd possibly say there's not too many of those Cork backs who like defending first. Sean O'Donoghue is probably their main man when it comes to defending first, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it is the likes of Sean O'Donoghue. And my thinking around this, Shane, would be you look at Waterford. I think Waterford have prepared this year, looking at a Limerick team. They've gone back with Jack Fagan wing back, who in my opinion is, just set down to mark Garrod Hegarty when the two sides clash. So you have to, I suppose in a way you can say it's horses for courses or something like that. But definitely I think it's something that Cork needs to look at. Now I know they don't like going down the road of man marking. Cork never have. In order to try and get one over on this Limerick team, Kinch is for me one of the guys that they need to try and tie down. If you can keep Ciaran Lynch quiet, I think it restricts Limerick's scoring power, and I suppose the guy that kind of creates everything, keeps him quiet as well. So it makes things very, very on Limerick then.
Yeah, absolutely. Ciaran, hopefully you can hear us loud and clear this time.
My apologies. My IT wouldn't be the best now, but I think I'm up and going now. Sorry about that.
You must have clicked in with a Nokia 3210, did you?
I'd say worse again, probably the Motorola, the Bricket one when it first came out.
Oh, the Triumph Geo. I think I know it well. I had it in first year of college. So we were just talking about obviously the influence of your nephew Ciaran Lynch and how good he is. And in the 3 games last year, he by a mile had the most shot involvements in the Cork Limerick games, 38, 35 scores off that. The next was Aaron Gallan with 22 involvements, 14 scores in terms of shots. How much do you think Cork can just say, as I was just asking Richie, if one thing happens on Sunday, we're not going to let Ciaran Lynch be the guy to beat us?
Yeah, I suppose if you're going to be earmarking players, right, and the Limerick's team from the opposition, like you'll be counting up to about 10. Right, and I suppose they have a lot of them, and I suppose trying to kind of babysit them all on the one day is the big one here. And you know, Cork played Limerick twice last year, the first round and in the final. They got a lot of joy from Limerick the first half. I think they did very well. The second half, then actually, you know, Limerick just overpowered them. And you know, we were talking about the league form, and I suppose the old mentality, the league form goes out the window Sunday. The big one for me really, have Cork really improved enough since last year? Like, you know, Richie would know, you know, coming off the field, losing an All-Ireland final is bad enough. But coming off the field, you know, receiving a series hiding like that, you know, that has to be hurtful, it has to be sore. And, you know, I'm not saying they're going to use that, but that has to be planted in the back of their mind at some stage, you know, Sunday. So, you know, obviously, you know, trying to keep Ciaran Lynch quiet is going to be a big one. You know, I would have said last year, whatever team keeps him quiet, they have a great chance. But if you keep him quiet, you know, Hegarty could explode, Tom Morrissey could explode, Aaron Gallan could explode. Okay, Flanagan is injured, Cathal O'Neill could explode. But I suppose, you know, that's one side of it. But Cork as a team, you know, I suppose they have to worry. They've probably have to put more of their interest in probably their defence. Because I think if they get the defence right, they have a team that's capable of hurting anybody, but they're probably struggling a small bit defence-wise. And unfortunately, if you're going to struggle defence-wise against Limerick, Limerick are going to hurt you.
Is there any one player that you as a Limerick man would look at and think, Ciaran, we really have to worry about this guy down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday?
Cork have a few of them, to be fair. You know, they definitely have two players there that potentially could be hurler of the year. Dara Fitzgibbon is one. Coleman is another one. Jack O'Connor on his there will take a bit of stopping. But in fairness to Limerick, you know, I suppose traditionally for the last 4 years, they've probably been ruthlessly going about trying to implement their own game. They don't seem to be that worried about the opposition. And, you know, and if I think anything this Sunday, you know, I think there could be a trick or two up Limerick's sleeve that Paul Kinnaird probably hasn't exposed during the league. I wouldn't rule that out because, you know, he's very inventive. You know, he's kind of very mathematically minded when it comes to coaching. So you were saying earlier on what Limerick are doing for the last 4 or 5 weeks in the Gaelic grounds. I suppose Sunday will tell the tale, and I wouldn't be surprised if they come out in a different type of a system also.
Okay, well, the remainder of the show will be available at patreon.com/OurGame, so join us there.